Welcome to High Sobriety. Our goal is to save lives and remove the stigma of addiction. Here's the host of High Sobriety, John Mabry.
All right, John Mabry here with High Sobriety. Our guest today is a founding member of the multi-Grammy-winning rock band Korn. The band has sold over 40 million albums and continues to tour the world. We're thrilled today to have introduced Brian Head Welch, the band's guitarist and author of multiple books. His most recent one, Eyes Wide Open, we'll talk about a little bit later on. But Brian, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Yes, no problem. I appreciate you having me.
So I guess I want to start off by saying on a personal level, so I was in a car accident. I was in college in Texas in 2000, and we just had a tire blowout. We rolled 10 times across the interstate outside of Houston.
Wow.
It killed a friend of mine, and I ended up having 14 surgeries that year. I tried to save my lower right leg, and so during that year, I had to move home from college into my parents' house, and I'm literally sitting on their living room couch, lifting weights as part of my rehab program, listening to Korn, and in particular Freak on a Leash. And at that point in time, I just felt like I was completely tethered down to this sickness and these injuries that I had. And it ended up getting to a point where I was finally able to take my first steps, and I was able to do it while listening to you guys in my headphones. And Freak on a Leash just runs really deep within me and helped me get through some tough times. So I just want to say on a personal note, thank you so much for what you do, and definitely made a positive impact on my life. So thank you.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh, what a fight to get through. That's crazy. I mean, people will say what they will about the Freak on a Leash song and what it means and everything, but that's a cool story of how it helped you just in that time. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's been a pretty crazy journey. Ended up having my leg amputated at the end of that year, and now I've done triathlons and acting in LA and all kinds of fun stuff. And but my most proud role that I've ever gotten to play is one as a father, and then two here at Addiction Campuses. Just being able to use my story through my road from addiction into recovery to hopefully help others, and that's why we wanted to bring you on as well. You mind telling our listeners, those that may not know, kind of a Cliff's Notes version of your story?
Yeah, I just remember when I was 10 years old, my parents, I wasn't a big music fan or anything, but I think the popular heavy metal record that came out that year was Back in Black, AC/DC, and my parents got me the record, and I put it on my stereo and played it, and I instantly became like addicted to hard rock, and I got into Iron Maiden, AC/DC, Ozzy Osbourne. Those were my bands, and within a few months I was begging for a guitar to learn how to play guitar, and they got me an acoustic guitar. I took lessons, learned like the basic songs, Mary Had a Little Lamb, all that garbage, until my mom knew that I was serious, and then she got me an electric. The rest was history, and I met the guys in Korn in around junior high, and we started these little cheesy hair metal bands and didn't do anything. And then, I guess destiny had our lives written to be connected in some way. And so we met up again in our early 20s. We formed Korn and got a record deal and just started touring. I knew that we had a special sound, but
mm-hmm.
I thought it'd be underground. And so when it blew up in the late 90s, it blew up so big, and we won Grammy Awards, MTV Awards, and, just one of the most popular bands in the world at that time. And it was surreal. And so we got that big, and then a lot of drugs, a lot of partying, and that dream that I had when I was a kid kind of went downhill just because of all the temptations and everything. And so I lived like just a drug addict and kind of functioning. I was married and I had a daughter and everything. And then at the end of my addiction, that's when I ended up getting invited to a church, and I asked Christ into my life, and long story short, everything changed in my whole life. He revealed himself to me, and my life was forever changed.
Nice, man. Would you say, were there any like seeds planted early on in your life that maybe you came back to later on as Christ revealed himself to you, or was it just something that happened later on in life?
Oh, definitely. I left that part out. So I was 12 years old. I got bullied in school. So I had these good friends and everything, and we were like a 3-pack. And once we got into junior high, 2 of those like would turn on me, and they would, when we would be alone, they would kind of bully me and just, you know, I don't know. It was just, I was the little weak one, you know, and they fed off of that. And so they bullied me, they beat me up a little bit and just belittled me, you know? And so, and then I went to school and had some other friends that were okay. And then this pack of Hispanic kids were, chose me to kind of pick on me at school. So it was just kind of rough. It was really rough. And I met this kid that lived near me, named Kevin. He didn't go to my school. He went somewhere else. And I hung out with him the whole summer and just kind of blew those kids off, blew those other friends I had off. And it was really cool because their family was just, you could feel the peace and that they liked each other. It seemed like, you know, my family, I didn't feel that connection. You know, my mom and dad didn't get along. Me and my brother hated each other, and my dad was just angry, and I didn't really like being around him, you know. And so this family was just, I liked being around them. And they told me about Jesus, and they told me that, you know, he's a savior of the world and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, that sounded kind of weird, you know. But I was like, well, if it's true, then I want that. And so one night I asked Christ to come and live in me, and I said, if you're the Savior, I want you. And that was it. And I didn't tell them. I didn't go to church or anything. And so that was my memory of just faith in God and everything.
Are there things today that you're still struggling with? Are there any kind of addictive tendencies today that, okay, I'm thinking of somebody that might be new, that might say, okay, I want to turn my life over to God, but now all of a sudden everything's going to be fine, everything's going to be okay, everything's going to be easygoing. I imagine that's not the case, at least that's not the case in my life, that it's kind of a turning over to God over and over and over again each and every day. Is that something that you find that you have to do or that you struggle doing?
Well, in the beginning, it was a thing where, you know, I didn't know if he was real. All I knew was that I asked him to come into my life when I was 12 and never talked to him again. And so there I was like, oh, okay, God, if you're real, then, you know, I need something from you. I need you to help me stop doing drugs or I'm going to die. Because I'm a massive addict of methamphetamine, Xanax, Vicodin, Coke, like everything I did. And so I needed something from him. And what happened was that nothing else worked. The rock star dream didn't work. The money, the millions of dollars didn't work. And so when I went to the church, I was like, I'm gonna try these people and see if this works. And so when the pastor said, read your Bible, learn about who God is, learn about his love for you, learn how to personally know him and let him come into your life and change everything. And so when I heard that, I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And I did everything. And I started learning. And that's when God became real. So what happened was I was trying to get high my whole life because I didn't like myself. And there was something more to the world, you know, and I was just trying to escape. And so once I felt the presence of God after being real and just going to church and talking to Christians, and I even started praying around people just because I was like, I want all in. If this is going to work, then I want it. So he started revealing himself to me. So the drugs, once I had a really close encounter with like just eternal life and that love and that realm of probably what heaven is going to be, you know, it's just perfection and unconditional pure love, you know, and I felt that. And so I wanted to feel that instead of the drugs. So that was the easiest part to get off of drugs. I was like addicted to that feeling of that pure love. And so the drugs, yes, that was all gone pretty quick. And since then, nowadays, I do have the tendencies. I I went 10 years and I stopped drinking and everything. And then I was on the road and I was like, you know what? I'm not an alcoholic anymore. I'm a new creation. Everything's brand new. So I can have some wine. So I started having some wine. And then a couple months later, I was in bars doing shots of Fireballs and stuff. So I guess I really am an alcoholic. So I stopped that and, went back and forth a little bit, but it's I'm so old now that I just the hangovers really help because I get bad hangovers, and so that just makes it not even like tempting to me because I don't want to feel bad, but now it's like I have the addiction to food. Like if I used to go on, even a couple of years ago, I'd go on food binges and just eat sugar and junk food for days, and I would feel like sick and hungover every day. I would even throw up sometimes, and so I had this addiction, and so that's gotten better. But yeah, it's there's stuff around, and I really take the faith seriously, and it says to lay your life down, to give your body as a living sacrifice and to God and everything, and so just it's not easy, but I do it, and it's there's so much meaning in my life now, and the God thing is just so real. It's so real, and it's not, some people that aren't Christians think it's brainwashing or something, but once you experience it, it becomes power and it becomes so meaningful to you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So somebody like yourself, you had everything going for you. You're one of the top, rock bands in the world, and you've got all the money and all the fame and all the drugs and everything that you could possibly want, and you're miserable on the inside.
Yeah.
And so you get to a point you're so desperate, and I know that a lot of folks in recovery talk about just that level of desperation, like it's something's got to give, or I'm going to give. And have you found that losing some folks like Chester from Linkin Park and Chris Cornell recently, did you find like maybe your head going to some of those places where you're like, I don't know if I can keep doing this?
Oh yeah, and especially knowing like the afterlife and how amazing it's going to be. Sometimes I'm just like, and how great it would be just to be there without the problems and everything. And and so yeah, I've definitely, when I was on drugs, I had the thoughts about I would mix uppers and downers so much, like speed and Xanax throughout the day, because I'd do speed like at noon. If I slept, I'd wake up at noon and I would drink a protein shake because I used to work out, and so I thought protein shakes were like the most healthy thing. And so I would drink one of those, and then I would do meth until 8 p.m. And then at 7:30, I'd take Xanax and drink 2 beers to play the show, just so I would stop shaking from the meth. And then I would play the show. I'd come back and I'd do meth till the morning. And if I did sleep, I'd sleep like 3 hours, and then I would do the same thing. So I was doing uppers and downers, and I was hoping that my heart would just stop when I slept. And so I just didn't have the will to take my own life, but I was hoping the drugs would. And so yeah, it's just, I've been there, man. I've really been there, and I could have died from the drugs, and it's horrible but man, we're fighters, humans are fighters. We're supposed to fight for our lives, fight for our children, fight for our families, and it's like, we can't give up, man. And so, yeah, it's been really hard with the suicides going on, and so close to home too. And we see other people that, like, for instance, like Brad Pitt, he was going through his divorce last year or the year before or something. And he's like the biggest actor of our time, one of them. And, he's drinking too much, and he's angry, and he lashed out at his family, and it's like none of that stuff in the world satisfies. It's a gift to be able to bless people with, musicians and actors and whatever you do in life. It's our gift is to make the world a better place. But it's nothing will satisfy except that eternal relationship, man. And
exactly,
so yeah,
exactly. So when I do a lot of talks around the community and to businesses and schools, I talk about. Have you ever seen the Rat Park video? Talks about studies done in the 70s about really addiction necessarily isn't the drugs themselves, but it's the lack of connection with other people in a spiritual power. and not even spiritual power, it's just the study kind of talked about just being connected with other people, with others. And so,
Wow.
No,
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, so the drugs aren't necessarily the problem. The drugs are a symptom of the disconnection problem. So our society isn't in an addictive, turmoil right now. We're in a disconnection turmoil right now, that we're more and more disconnected. And so what I'm hearing you say is that if somebody out there can relate to feeling alone and feeling isolated and feeling defeated, that nothing else is working for you. If you're trying to find fixes in the world, if you're trying to find it from the, from temporary things, a lot of times you're going to end up going back to those because it's not going to work longer term. And that's where it sounds like you've been able to take that disconnection that you felt and to plug in to a source that's greater than you, that's bigger than you, that is bigger than anything else that you've ever been able to find, and it's been able to sustain you. So what a testimony.
Exactly.
What's the difference, in your opinion, from what's your view on religion over spirituality?
Yeah, it's just religion just to me just seems like, when I was a kid, I would go to mass, and I went to Episcopal church, and there was just a lot of like chanting and reading from a book or something, and taking the stale bread, and and it felt like and the wine, and doing all the communion and all that, and no one talked about real life. It was just like repeating this. Everybody repeats these words from this book, and you stand up and sit down and all this stuff, and it wasn't real, and as a kid, it felt like I was at a funeral or something. It just was dark and quiet, and so that what I think about that when I think about religion, or like the rules of what you got to do, and dressing up on Sunday and going and playing that part, and then you leave and you have no connection at home with God except bless our food or something like that before you eat, and to me that's religion, and it's like there's no substance to it, and there's nothing personal with God about it. And you just think about your best friends, or if you had a good parents, like thinking about that relationship like that, or a lover or something like that. It's like how close, how do you share intimate words with people close to you like that? And that's what spiritual life is to me. It's like you share the deepest intimacy as far as like what you're going through in life, what you need to feel from God, the hardest things you're going through in life, like you would share that with the closest people in your life. And that's what spiritual life is. The relationship with God. And it's foreign and it's new to most people because God is invisible and everything. But, just add to your prayer that, show me you're real, reveal to me that you're hearing me. And he definitely gives signs. And so that's the difference to me between religion and spiritual life.
Nice. Well, I want to talk a couple of questions here about your book, Eyes Wide Open, your most recent book, released last year. And just like your other two books, my producer and I, we couldn't put them down. And but this one's different, though. In it, you focus a lot on your relationship with your daughter. Can you describe the tough situations that you've had to endure or go through, raising a child in the line of work that you're in, traveling as much as you are, things of that nature? And then maybe just kind of give us a rundown of something else, a couple other points of interest that people might be able to take from picking up your book, Eyes Wide Open.
Okay. Thank you for saying that, by the way. I wrote my first book in 2007, Save Me From Myself. It's the whole testimony of my addiction and to freedom and everything. And then where I left off that book, that's where With My Eyes Wide Open came in. And it basically takes off, I start writing. It's like a part two to Save Me From Myself. My daughter's, me and my daughter are trying to live life together as I'm a single dad and everything, and I left Corn, and so I'm just raising her. So I just talk about all the battles, with my old personality of my addict self, trying to get healed as I'm walking by faith, as I'm raising the kid and just trying to start a new life. And it's like every battle that I could face after going through all of my addiction and everything, and then also the fame, and then coming down and being like a normal person, and all that stuff, and the anger and the rage that was in my life that I masked with alcohol and drugs for so many years. I talk about that. I talk about just going through really hard times in life, as far as like, you know, I had good money for over a decade, and then I made bad business moves and I lost it all, went bankrupt. I talk about the like really hard struggles going through in life and overcoming them. And even to the point where my daughter when she turned to a teenager, you know, she started harming herself and cutting and suicidal thoughts and threats. It was just like one bad thing after another. And that's I got through all of that stuff without going back to the drugs and alcohol, and
wow,
and everything turned around. So that's what that book's about, is overcoming everything without going backwards to my old life again. And then it led me back into corn, and you know, my daughter got better, and I go back to corn, and I'm in corn now, and I'm reaching out to the people that are probably struggling with addiction and or you know, suicide or anything like that. That's my focus. And so yeah, it was like a preparation phase to face like every fear and difficult circumstance in my life, and I shared it all in that book. And once we can get through, that's how God worked in my life, by the way. I mean, people would always tell me I was on a fast track, and so I had to be prepared for something, and so I had to go through maybe more things than your average person would have to go through as part of my preparation. So I took that to heart, you know, and so that made me a better fighter, you know, to just be able to fight through it. And so it was really hard at sometimes, and you know, I wanted to go back and to my old life, but I never did. I just fought through it, and you know, I wasn't perfect, but I made it through. And yeah, so that's what the book's about. And I guess that's a long, very long description of it.
No, that's great. That's great. No, I mean, I think it's important for folks to hear that it's not like giving up the drugs and alcohol isn't like when things necessarily get better, at least in my case, and it sounds like in yours, like giving up the drugs and alcohol, now all of a sudden I got to deal with me. And the reason I was using drugs and alcohol is because I didn't want to deal with me, or I didn't want to deal with the situations around me. So you remove the blanket from the baby, you take the pacifier away from the baby, and the baby's going to start screaming and crying. And that's what my soul and that's what my emotions wanted to do when I had to get sober, when I decided to get sober, was like, oh my gosh, now all these emotions are coming out. And you described anger and fear and probably some rage there that starts to come out. And so you've got to be able to find a way to deal with those in a healthy way. Who would you say have been, you know, one or two of your primary mentors or people to help you get through some of these things because you left corn, you're leaving the thing that helped get you to where you were, and you're leaving the money, you're leaving the fame, you're leaving your friends, and you're going out on your own. And now all of a sudden, oh my gosh, and now I've given up drugs and alcohol. Now I got to deal with me, and I got my daughter and the mother, you know, I've got to deal with. Who has helped you along the way? Because I know in my recovery, I can't do it by myself. I've got to have, you know, people that I turn to help me through. How about for you?
Yeah, there was a few pastors that helped me. I moved a few times, so I would connect. I just connected with people. You know, the main thing was I found in 1 John in the Bible, it said that the Holy Spirit will teach you all things. You know, and so I really leaned into my faith and really focused into the invisible realm, you know, and just wanted to know that personal thing too. Nice. Like what if man didn't have the answer, you know, for me? What if my friends didn't have the answer? And so I did have a lot of people help me though. And so pastors, this guy, Pastor Ron in Bakersfield, California, there was some other friends in Phoenix that really helped me. And so just some key people that I knew that were divine connections, you know, and so, and I love how you said it too. Like I had to face me, you know, all those things that the real me, and learn how to, tame the wild horse, I guess.
Exactly.
And you know what? And forgive myself too. And because I still have to do that, because there's things that I do that are quirky and today, you know, that, and I just, you gotta forgive ourselves just like we forgive others, because we're not perfect and they're not perfect. And so every day that we choose God, we have to choose to forgive ourselves and others too. So yeah, a lot of key people in my life over the years.
Well, what's so now that you're back with the band, you've been back with the band for 6-7 years, somewhere in that range. What's the hardest thing for you these days to stay on the path that you're on while touring the world? What's one or two of the hardest things that you struggle with on kind of a daily basis with your current situation?
Wow, my life's so different from most people. Just I live in a flipping tube, it's hard to tour, and I guess fatigue, with my life, it's just I don't get proper sleep, and then I get just anxiety sometimes, with people everywhere. I meet like 100 people a day, and I love people, but at the same time, just picture having 100 people come to your living room
just exhausting
every night and busy. Yeah, it's exhausting, and so that I'd say fatigue and just that's probably it.
Man, that's well. I think a lot of people can relate to that. I think a lot of people can, they might have 100 people knocking on their door every single day, but they're fatigued with their children and their jobs and running the kids to school and those kinds of things. I think a lot of people can relate to fatigue. Yeah, absolutely.
And then also, like, if you get around the wrong people, that's another thing too. So I have to train myself to just I need my alone time, and I get charged back up, and then talking with the right people, hanging with the right people, and talking about real life, that helps. I got my bass player's a Christian, and it's not like I don't hang out with all Christians. I'm not saying that, but just people that really talk about the things that I know are really important in my life, and that helps too. So
awesome. Yeah, to be able to find people you can be real with, I think, is important for folks in recovery and seeking a different way of life. Is being able to tap in, going back to that disconnection problem. When we're not honest with ourselves or honest with the people around us, we're only just lying to ourselves. And so to be able to find people you can, and you don't have to have 900 people that you're honest with, but you find one or two confidants that you can share what's really going on. I mean, that's a huge start.
Yeah. Totally agree.
So we've got your latest book, Eyes Wide Open. This is your third book. Are there any more coming down the pipeline, or can we expect any more books coming from you in the future?
It's the funniest thing because, if somebody would have told me I was going to write books, I would have just laughed in their face before, because I was never good at school and I never liked writing, and none of that stuff. But once your heart gets full and you want to share something, and it's a purpose, I tell people all the time, that's another proof of the miraculous things that God does with a normal life, because I just wasn't good at that, and I have best-selling books now, but it's really hard to put together a book, and it's really time consuming, and I don't know if either of you have written a book, but it's a lot of work, and so I don't have any plans to. Basically, I was really good at just sharing my life and sharing stories, so I don't really have nothing else to share yet. But
yeah.
So, I mean, if an idea pops up, and I would definitely put out another book, and I think I will. I just have no plans as of now.
Well, Brian, this has been amazing experience. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule there in foggy London town. Want to thank you for taking time with us. How can listeners connect with you, either online or best places to find more information about you?
Yeah, this is crazy. I'm in London, UK, and we didn't have any phone issues. That is never happens.
Never happens.
Right on. But yeah, people can connect with me, and everything is Brian with an I, Head, Head, Welch, Welch, one word. It's Facebook.com/Brian Head Welch, Twitter, Brian Head Welch, Instagram, Brian Head Welch, all that stuff. So they can find me on there, and brianheadwelch.net, and that's about it.
Excellent. Well, thank you again so much. Safe travels the rest of your tour, and look forward to meeting you here when you guys come to back to Nashville.
Yeah, man, I look forward to it. Can't wait.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to High Sobriety. If you or a loved one are struggling with an addiction, we can help. Call our hotline at 844-888-HELP. That's 844-888-4357. Don't wait. Call today, 844-888-HELP. High Sobriety is an Addiction Campuses podcast.